Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unmute, the well-being podcast brought to you by We Care. All episodes streamed on Spotify and internally via Core and Concentrix University for our game changers.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Unmute. As always, I'm your host, James Hughes, and this week we are celebrating quite a milestone for Unmute. It's our 1 year birthday, so it was August last year that we launched this podcast. So to celebrate, we're going to be looking back at some of the highlights that we've experienced along the way, share some experiences and the feelings that we have around it, and then also looking ahead to what the second year holds. I am delighted this week to be joined by Aimee Carton, who is going to be doing me a favour and taking over as the interviewer, asking me the question. So Aimee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I noticed at the start of your introduction, you described yourself as host, Jim. Don't you know that today I get to be host? It's my job to interview you.
I'm excited for this. I never get to be on the receiving end. It's nice.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Are you you're excited for it, but what are you looking forward to, or what are you most excited about with today's episode?
I think, so from a host perspective, there's a lot of focus to make sure the conversation doesn't drift too far away from the topic. And I'm constantly thinking how I can get this back to whatever my next question is. Whereas this time, I just feel a bit more relaxed. I didn't have to do all of the prep work. And not to sound like I'm complaining too much about the past episodes, but yeah, I'm enjoying I don't know. It's up to you how this episode unfolds, and I'm happy to have that pressure taken off of me.
Okay. Now you're adding to the pressure on me.
Yeah.
I didn't quite expect that this is what I was agreeing to when you asked about it, but I think it could be fun. I'm really excited because I love the power. I'm such a control freak, but I love having the power of orchestrating a conversation. So I'm personally very excited to dig into Unmute and understand how you've experienced all of the incredible conversations and episodes that have been released and the just simply connecting with people. So I'm really excited to see how you've experienced that and unpack that with you. So I guess the kind of structure for today is I'm just going to ask you questions. It's going to be really fun, I think.
Yeah, let's go.
So let's start with a nice broad question. Looking back over the last year, what do you think has been the most rewarding or the most, not even beneficial, but like the thing that's touched you the most, the thing that has really stuck with you the most over the last year?
Gosh.
Starting with a big one.
I can't believe it's already been a year. I'm kind of shocked when I saw the notification come in to say, it's 1 year today and stuff. That surprised me because it's gone so fast. And looking back though, I guess the very, very beginning, before we launched a podcast, I remember when it was being spoken about as part of our plan from Wellbeing and Concentrix to do this. And I was excited anyway. But these are the kind of things I enjoy, So then the second step was I was asked to work on it. So I was like, cool. Yeah, this is a project that I really want to get my teeth into. So I'm excited for that. And then being asked to host it, I think there's an element of trust that I felt that was put in me. When we're talking about mental health and some of the conversations we've had with previous guests, they've been really sensitive conversations. And, I think it takes a lot from my team to be able to trust in the person to be able to navigate that conversation, make sure they're not going to disrespect anyone who comes on the show. There's an element of having to be a good representative of Concentrix because this is also on Spotify and on YouTube. And so it's, I felt really flattered that I'd been asked, to do that. And then to be honest, it was not at all what I expected. Some of the stories and things that what people have shared have just been more than incredible. And I guess maybe I was a bit naive in thinking how deep some guests were willing to go. And we might just focus on the surface of a subject. But then when we get into it and they're talking about their real life experiences, some of it has been fascinating. There's been really like traumatic experiences that people have shared as well. But I guess overall, just like inspiring. So I think for me as a host and looking at it from like a project that we do, I think the trust is the biggest thing. And then that carries into the actual episodes itself, the fact that guests have that element of trust and they want to open up like they do. I just find amazing. So I can't believe it's been a year. And I think that's also a good testament to it, that it's gone so fast.
Wow. That is so beautiful. And I think you're right. You do create that level of comfort and safety for your guests, and they do open up. I think that's one of the most extraordinary things about Unmute, about the podcast, and the stories that you're able to unfold with them. I'd like to dig into it just a little bit deeper, maybe, and understand, is there any one specific moment or one specific interaction that has really stuck with you or kept you motivated to keep going with this? Because of course it's rewarding what you're talking about, but it's also quite heavy and it is a lot of work. I know how much work you put into this. So I'd love to understand if there's any kind of standout moment that is connecting with you.
I'd say every time we receive feedback, it always catches me off guard. And sometimes it can be a comment that's been left on an episode, and it could just say something really short and sweet of like, I love this episode, keep it up, something like that.
Aww.
I always really enjoy seeing them, knowing that someone has listened to it and enjoyed it and it's made a difference there. Within Concentrics as well, I've received like an email from, it could be someone quite senior, and they're going to be presenting Unmute to their team or whoever they report into, which is even more senior. And they're asking me for some stats and stuff. And that makes me pause and be like, this is cool.
That is very cool.
That have really important decisions and stuff to be making on their day-to-day, they see this as significant enough that they want to be presenting on it. I like the idea that that we've got these people from all types of job roles in the company, and it doesn't matter who you are, but people are listening to it, and it's making a difference that way. So getting those emails come in from someone quite high up in the company, just to be asking like, hey, how many people have been listening this year? How many countries has the podcast been played in? This kind of stuff. I think this is so nice that you see this as worthwhile enough to then be reporting on and sharing the stats and stuff. So it's not just a tick box exercise. It's generally being listened to by the people who wanted to make it happen. And I think that's contagious within the company. It's sort of like that drip down approach where the senior leads are listening to it and managers listening to it, their teams, and frontline game changers as well, which I find really cool. I think it doesn't matter who you are. Mental health is relatable to all of us. So,
that's so true.
Yeah,
that is definitely so true. I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you how many people have listened to Unmute over the year. You're talking about the kind of ripple effect or the butterfly effect that one person listening and sending it to someone else has caused. But what does that actually look like in terms of listenership?
So we're measuring it in plays at the moment, and we're 18,500 plays since the launch, which is really cool. Like,
wow.
And there's obviously as well like an audience within the company, but also outside. Just, I guess, being a little bit proud of it when it launched. I shared it with friends and family and was like, check this out. And, because I wanted them to see what I was up to and stuff. But I don't know, how far that goes. Last time we looked, it was in 71 countries, which is also like a global footprint.
Yeah.
When I see someone in like Singapore is listening to it and then they leave a comment, I'm like, that's just bonkers that, my voice was being played out of a speaker in headphones in Singapore. I'm like, this is the weirdest thing. But I kind of love it. you know. And it's also nice thinking for the guest, because the guest comes on, I think they assume they're just talking to me, and they're not. They're talking to so many more people in so many different cultures who are going through, you know, really different lives. Yeah, and I think that's really sort of like monumental, you know, when we look at it from that perspective.
That's amazing. I think what you said before, that mental health and the experience of wellness or unwellness, it affects all of us. It
Yeah.
doesn't just hit one country or one, job level or anything like that. It impacts all of us. And I think as one of your listeners, one of the things that I am so impressed by every episode, I'm so impressed by, is the culture of safety, of allowing openness and allowing vulnerability. Like, I'm always so surprised how some of your guests who I may not have thought that they would be willing to open up so much, they have done that. And I think that speaks a lot about maybe mental health in either concentrics or the workplace, or the shifting conversation around mental health. There's so many different things that it could be attributed to. But I'd love to understand from your perspective, through this journey of stories being told, what has surprised you, either about mental health in the workplace, concentrics, our culture. What has really sparked your interest as you have these conversations with so many of our people?
Yeah. First, on the willingness for guests to open up, it surprises me every time.
Wow.
There's a lot of conversation prior to hitting record. You know, we talk back and forth to make sure that they understand what the process looks like, but also to make sure that they feel like they're in a safe space when we start the recording. And it could be really simple instructions, but if you tell someone, if you ever want to take a break and pause, that's absolutely fine. I think that goes a long way of making them feel less aware of the recording flashing light, you know, and you're like, oh, everything I'm saying is being recorded and it's going to be listened to. And a lot of people at the end of when we stop recording, they say, I forgot, you know, it just felt like a one-on-one conversation. My preference has always been to keep it as organic as possible. So for every episode, I will plan questions to ask. And I'd say for nearly every episode, I ask maybe 1 in 10 questions that I've planned. And it's because the conversation, I want to learn more about what they're talking about, and I can't predict their answers. So I'll try to think of a question on the spot and ask them about. In terms of like the things that have like resonated most with me, there's been some themes that we've discussed where I was quite naive prior to talking about it. Whereas there's others that I thought I would have a more natural connection with. So when we do episodes about like men and mental health, very close to my heart, and I'm going into that expecting this like probably going to be my favorite episode. And then there's others we talk about. The one that's popping into my mind now, we did an episode on burnouts. I've never experienced the burnout, and I hear it as a word of how to prevent burnouts. And it's always the sort of like the precursor. We never actually see what a burnout looks like. And we had a guest, Louise Geersing, who's based in the Netherlands, who shared the most vulnerable story that I've ever heard when it comes to burnouts, and the physical impact it had on her and the mental impact. I was just completely blown away. You know those moments where you feel your mouth open because you're in shock about it was like that. I had no idea the severity of what a burnout can do to someone. And then we do a full circle where she's talking about how she overcame that on the road to recovery, and you know what her life looks like now. And at the end of it, you come away thinking, this person just has like the most incredible resilience. They still have a day-to-day job, family and friends that they need to be there for. In addition to that, look at what they've gone through and going through. And that was for me one that, yeah, I remember after recording, taking 20 minutes away from my desk just to sort of like process the whole story. And I found it so brave that someone could talk as openly as that. And not that they shouldn't. I just know that yeah, for certain people, it takes a huge amount of courage to go through it before even being able to look back and share that experience, you know? So it's episode number 4 for anyone who's listening who has not heard it yet. Louise Gearson talking about burnouts. It is really worth a listen. And also, there's so much good advice in there of how you can overcome it. And it sounds a bit cliche, but it was one of those. I never thought it would happen to me, and then it did. And I think a lot of people, would share that view. You never think it's going to be you until it is. So yeah, there's really good inputs from Louise there where you can overcome that. That's the one that is popping to my mind now.
Wow, that is incredible. I've listened to that episode, and it is incredible. Your description of having that open mouth experience is absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
That is so true. I like the plug for it. I think I'm curious about that experience of creating those safe spaces, of creating those opportunities for really people to unpack their journeys, to show that vulnerability. And it's something I'm realizing I'm doing a bad job as a host here.
No.
Because I probably should have started with this. But I want to go back to a year ago. I know usually you're meant to do this at the start of an episode, not at the middle or kind of halfway through. But, what was it that you were expecting with Unmute? Unmute is this podcast. You came up with this concept, this idea of normalizing the conversation around mental health. But episodes like the burnout one with Louise, was that even on your roadmap? Was that the idea behind it? Or you talked about the men's mental health one, or, the conversations around parenthood. This podcast has touched so many different topics. And I wonder, when we go back a year, what were your expectations? What did you think would happen with this podcast?
It's a good question, because what I wanted to happen and what I thought would happen are different things. I expected it to be more fluffy, almost like, I'm sure we've all seen them before. You see like a webinar and like buzzwords, and I know I've already used this phrase, but it feels like a tick box exercise from a company. We're going to talk about burnouts just to say that we are aware of them, but we're not going to talk about the actual severe experiences of them. I was expecting to be the conversations to be more confined than they have been, and it's been the opposite. So the people that make the decisions about what we can and can't talk about have always been, let's talk about it. Let's not contradict ourselves. We say we're here to break the stigma. Let's break the stigma. Let's really dig deep into these conversations. Let's not keep it fluffy. We want to be sincere and prove to game changers within concentrics, but also to anyone listening, that it's absolutely okay to talk about these things. I didn't expect that, and that's not to have a dig at concentrics. It's not common in a corporate setting, and yeah, we have in our vision statements about challenging the status quo. I can't think of a better way to challenge it than this, where we're actually following through with that as well. And in terms, the actual subjects being discussed, sometimes they come from a game changer will reach out to me that I've never spoken to before. This is my story and this is what I want to share. And it's incredible. Again, I expected me to have to come up with the theme for every episode, always be relating it to what's happening around us. And it's not the case at all. We get people that want to share because they know the help it can bring. Maybe they've heard someone else talk about it and they've been inspired by them and they want to follow suit. And I've seen that in the last year. The more episodes that we're doing, the more people we're reaching, the more guests are wanting to come on. And I think at the beginning it was a little bit difficult in encouraging people to, it's okay to share. And I think that is just a stigma that surrounds it. And you've got people sat there listening to someone share their own story and think, I want to do that with mine. And some of them are incredibly heavy, but there's also really positive,
Yeah.
happy episodes. We're recording an episode in the next couple of weeks about comedy and humor and how that impacts your mental health. So it's just a complete, diverse range of subjects that we're covering, and I didn't expect that. But also the backing. I know it sounds like I've been told to say this, and hands, I've not been told to say anything. But there's been a few where I've sought advice after planning an episode of like, do you think this is okay? And I'll admit I've had to be called out of, you're here to break the stigma. Go for it and have that conversation. And as long as we keep within parameters, we don't disrespect anyone, we don't undermine any type of condition that we're talking about. Try to be as vulnerable and as honest as possible. And then even that carried through to an editing phase as well. I want, after the editing, it still feels like the natural conversation that we had, you know? Yeah, so it's exactly what I wanted to happen and not what I expected to, I think.
That's amazing. I definitely know that no one is forcing you to say any of this, because I didn't know that you expected it to be so fluffy and light when you initially came up with it as a concept. So you definitely deserve like a slagging for that. But it's a really good insight. It's really interesting hearing how much of your the people who reach out to you asking to participate, to lean in, to talk and share stories. It is a ripple effect. We talk about that, but one person unmuting the mic and coming off and sharing their story is leading to another and another and another, and it's spreading. And that's the foundational approach with mental health and breaking the stigma. So it's awesome to see it in real time.
Yeah.
And I wonder, with that, how else do you see engagement from your audience? I know you've talked about it before, some of the messages you've received just from listeners. And I'm curious how that shapes both your reaction and your experience with Unmute, but also the direction you're taking it moving forward, or how you define episode choices, for example, or content types. Like comedy, that's such a cool idea, and it does have such a strong relationship to mental health. I know I definitely do. So I'm curious, what kind of sparks that? How are you creating that snowball?
Yeah, I think it goes in stages. We get like reviews of episodes and then requests that follow the reviews. And I think that's the sort of trajectory I'm on now. I honestly can't remember the last time I drew up a list of subjects to be discussing for the next month or so, because we ask people, what do you want to talk about and what do you want to hear about? That we just did one 2 or 3 months ago on parenthood. And to say that there'd been someone knocking at the door for like 6 months is a bit of an understatement. People were saying, I want to hear an episode on parenthood, and it just had to go into a queue, but it wasn't on my original list to talk about it. It got some of the best engagement from all of the other episodes that we did in terms of the most listeners after 24 hours. It's one that I still see comments coming through now, despite it being, a few months old. And I think that that's a really good example of you have to listen to what people do want to hear about, and kind of follow it and change your plan, because I did have my roadmap of here's all of the topics that we're going to discuss this year. But if someone's saying we don't want to hear from that, we want to hear about this other thing, I think that's important to listen to. I think keeping in mind as well that you're doing it for an audience, and even when we record an episode, when I'm sat listening, I'm also thinking, what do they want me to ask? And the they are those thousands of people listening. I want to make sure that, because I've been there before as a listener, and I'm sat there listening to an interview thinking, ask them about X, and it's really frustrating if they don't. So I'm always thinking, for someone looking in, what have they touched upon where I've not asked enough about, and where further can this conversation go? And just trying to make sure that as the representative for the listeners, staying engaged that way. And sometimes I'm not going to get it right every time. For sure, we have really successful episodes, but also that means there's someone on the other end of the spectrum, and it's important to review them equally. What worked well, what didn't work well. Thankfully, I get more positive comments than no comments, than negative ones. But I guess that's, just sort of like the name of the game. It would be wrong of me though to only look at those good ones. So when there's an episode with less engagement, I guess a bit of stubbornness comes out of me. I want to know why that is, and refuse to let it go. I think, how can we do it again but make it better? And we've done that. We've covered the different subjects, but all part of the same theme. Where maybe after an episode, I've spoken with the guest and we regret that we didn't talk about X and Y. So we say, let's go again. Let's record again the following week. We'll call it like a part 2, where we can delve deeper, because sometimes it doesn't happen as naturally as you think, or there's not enough time. It could be loads of constraints. So I think, listening to the audience of what they want, but also listening to what's not working well and looking to improve that is really important. And I feel like I'd be doing Unmute a disservice if that wasn't happening.
That's amazing. It's so interesting hearing this and hearing how this has grown so much.
Yeah,
you should be so proud of yourself.
Those
Genuinely. And
wider team, it's not. I am so grateful to hear any sort of like praise and recognition, but it's a much wider team that put this together. I think I'm lucky because I'm the face, but it's the same with, we have like chat shows in countries, and the host of the show will receive all of the credit, but there's, the lighting, a sound team, and editing. There's so much of more people that are involved in this. So a complete team effort from, the wellbeing side and Concentrics.
That's really awesome to hear. I think I know some of the work that goes into this, so I agree. There's some really awesome people supporting you from the, I wouldn't say shadows, but not from the camera lens as such. But I was going to say, what's so interesting about your kind of that sum up of how audiences are engaging and how you're connecting with your audience and getting their feedback and shaping the content is the space you took to talk about maybe the episodes that weren't as good. That vulnerability of yourself that you're just sharing now, that not everything is batting 100 as I think I've heard you say it, but it's interesting because it shows how much this topic is connecting and resonating with some people, how different nuances of the topic connects and resonates with people. You talked about parenthood there. Like, that is something, like, I remember when you first brought it up and said this is being requested. Like, it's so wonderful that that's the natural direction that Unmute has taken, to actually follow where people are most interested, where they're talking and experiencing and living the challenges of mental health, of stigma, of not knowing how to raise these topics. And it kind of, I'm conscious of our time and the audience's time, not wanting to go on too much, but I'm curious, when you think of the future, we've covered how this first year of Unmute has shaped how it's gone from this maybe more, the expectations of something more fluffy, as you described it, into something more authentic, that grew its own legs, that grew this ripple effect. But what's next? As we go into the second year, how is the terrible twos, maybe I shouldn't call it terrible twos, it's not a toddler, but like, how is it going to transform? How do you see that happening?
I think first, in terms of trying to cover more themes and subjects, like, I said that we have the humor one that's planned, and there's also some that I want to do that we've not done yet. And I think every single person in the world are impacted by, like political, social, economical impacts, and they could be independent episodes, but we've never done them. So I think that could be really interesting to look at, to keep, I don't know, like challenging what we are talking about. That's something I really enjoy, because sometimes as a team, when we sit and talk about, what should we discuss in the next sort of episode, and I like those conversations, because it would be really easy to say, oh, let's talk about mental health and let's pick a buzzword of like anxiety, done, and you just stop there. And the conversation is always like, but why anxiety? And in what sort of context are we talking about it? And what's the goal at the end of this? What do we want people to do? And so I think, yeah, challenging ourselves to come up with a wider range of topics is definitely something I want to do in year 2, to have more. Not to reveal any names, we have a senior figure in the company who's going to be joining us for an episode as we celebrate We Care Week, which is a week designated to wellbeing and concentrics. I'm really excited for that, because again, it's that, walk the walk. So this is a senior figure in the company who has been very supportive of Unmute. It'd be very easy, though, for that person not to listen to episodes, not to volunteer to come on. And it's the opposite. It's, no, I'm serious when I say I support it. I want to be on there. I want to be vulnerable when I'm on there. And I want more of that. I feel like I'm calling out now our senior leads and concentrics, but yeah, maybe I am. I really enjoy it, because I've done episodes with advisors and managers and really senior figures, and it's like within 5 seconds we're just equal. There's no hierarchy that exists in this at all. It's just really, strip it back to basics with 2 individuals, 2 human beings talking about an experience. And I want to experience more of that, I think, moving forward. There's also some topics that we're getting requests on. We've touched upon in the past. I think the biggest one at the moment is grief. And there's a lot of subjects where we did some, for example, like World Suicide Prevention Day, or even episodes just about depression. It can talk about what caused it. Was it grief that caused it? Or did someone pass away after losing a battle with depression? It can be these kind of things. But grief as a standalone subject hasn't been done yet. And in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, requests coming in, it's one of the more sought after sort of episodes. And I think people want to know that they're not on their own with this kind of stuff, and just to hear other people talk about it is that sort of validation that, everyone has their own sort of equivalent. Everyone can struggle. And when you hear that, I think it can make it easier of having that sort of company, the support, that, yeah, I'm not dealing with this thing by myself and I'm not weak for struggling with it. I just think from the messages I've received, that's the overriding. And then, like I said earlier, on the flip side of that, there's the more positive sort of uplifting episodes, I guess, like the humor one. Had a request last week to do one on pets, so I'll be well up for that.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, this is what I love about it. Like, what doesn't fall under the umbrella of mental health? Everything does. Everything impacts our mental health, and our mental health impacts everything. So the possibilities for themes is endless. So excited to do more and cover more topics in year 2, reach more people, get that global footprint. So just continue to rise, I think.
Oh my god, I love that, especially the pets one. I'm so on board for this. This has to happen.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
One final one. We're being vulnerable, so let me be vulnerable. I have no idea what I'm doing as a host. I feel so inferior to you right now, and it's been playing on my conscience all episode. You made it very easy, I have to say. You're a great participant, but I feel like I might have left a question off. I might have forgotten to raise something. I didn't think to ask. You know your audience better. I didn't think to ask a question that you had wished, or you would know your audience would want you to ask, or me to ask. That was phrased really badly, so I apologize. But what I wanted to say is, or ask, is what is something that I haven't raised or that we haven't gotten to or touched upon today? What is something that you would love to share as we wrap up today's episode?
Oh God, that has put me on the spot.
It's a big one. I'm sorry.
I think in regards to vulnerability, I don't want to end like on a negative, but when we review these kind of things and we talk about it, it's really easy to focus on what's been the best moment so far. What are the successful stats? And you kind of like never look at what are the pain points, what are the problems that you don't enjoy so much about it, because hey, it's like a work in progress, right? And I don't mind sharing that. And one that's just sprung to mind is a really consistent conversation I have with guests after we've recorded is the time element. And I think people enjoy talking more than they're aware. And I know that's such a blanketed statement to put out there. But at the end, and we could be recording for like an hour, people are like, I don't want to stop talking about my experience and, my feelings. And I think, because the time restraint exists, that's a real pain point. And I'm often then concerned that they don't have enough of those opportunities, Then you fast forward a couple of weeks and people also say, I carried on talking about that thing with my partner, with my family member, with my colleague. And I think, awesome. Well, you didn't get to record for hours and hours and hours, but you have served the purpose there. You've started a conversation and you've passed the baton over to someone else, and now it continues. And that's like a really nice way to look at it. And in the same breath, I hate that we can't just have a limitless recording time and just spend the entire working day just chatting. And 'cause I think that's what people want to do when they get into it. But you've got one eye on the clock. So that's a problem with the podcast that I experience, is there's not enough time sometimes to have the full conversation. But at least what it does is it starts it so they feel comfortable and they feel that desire. They want to talk about it. And I love it when someone says that, because I think it could be really easily misconstrued as being egotistical and arrogant and self-centered. But I want to keep talking about me. Love that. Yeah, I wish everyone did it more, because, I think you can only sort of like grow and overcome the things that you're going through by talking about them and sharing them. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Honestly, it does. And I think that's what myself, as a honorary representative of the people, of the audience, I think that's the power of what Unmute offers. It's starting this conversation, giving people the mic, unmuting it as such.
Yeah.
And once that happens, it is a butterfly effect, not just of the topic, but the person spreading it to people in their lives and the listener spreading it to people in their lives. And it sparks something really fundamental in us, where you're right, giving someone a microphone to share their story, it amplifies, it changes the way that we talk, how we talk, who we talk to. And it's a real privilege to get to offer you the mic today and get to hear your thoughts on how that has worked, how Unmute has worked, how it's grown from something fluffy into something really authentic and vulnerable, and a movement of the people, which is extraordinary. And and everyone involved in this project should be so proud of themselves. It's well done.
Completely agree. Thank you. And as well, just like a last message before finishing, is we can only continue that second year and the third and fourth and so on with the listeners. So for anyone who's listening, please recommend Unmute to someone else, and leave any sort of comment you want, and please just keep listening, because it's the only way we can carry on.
That's amazing. Okay,
thank you so much.
Jim.
Thank you.
Should I be thanking you, or are you thanking me? This isn't what we're end to the episode,
So nice. I'm not having to think about what the next question's going to be. And that was nice.
Okay, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and to the audience as well. I hope they have
Thank
great
you.
days.
Thank you.
Okay.
Join us again next week for another episode where we unmute the conversation around mental health.